You have a minute. What are you building?
We're trying to reimagine product management from the ground up using AI.
Should this be a company or a nonprofit?
What the heck is going on with it?
It strikes me that you've chosen the hardest segment to build for instead of the easiest.
I really like to make money.
I don't care. No one cares.
But you don't need to have this debate with me.
It's literally days of work turned into 2 minutes.
I have grokked 0 of this pitch over the past 9 minutes.
There's always time to dream the big dream and dream the big vision, but start literal so that you make sure people are coming along with you for the journey.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm Sherveen. I'm the founder and CEO of Agency. You're in our offices. We're a venture-backed startup. We provide Hollywood-style representation to tech talent. It's a variety of job search and career services for folks who work in tech. That's the only shilling I really care to do right now. I'm an occasional angel investor, but more importantly in the context of right now, I'm the host of the Feedback Loop. And we've been doing this since about May. Every week, a batch of startup founders, or almost every week, gets up on stage and gives their 1-minute pitch about their startup, their vision of the future, and their attempt to change the way the Earth spins. The best part about it, too, is I get to welcome a guest venture investor to the stage to give this unfiltered feedback. I occasionally write checks, but we bring in folks who do this professionally and all the time. Lainy Painter Singh, who is a partner at Craft Ventures, is going to be my partner today in giving feedback to these founders. Do us a favor, Lainy. Tell the audience, tell me who are you philosophically in the world of tech and venture?
Absolutely. I'm an early stage investor. I invest in seed and Series A companies from the earliest stages of just an idea to some meaningful traction. And I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to start this thing. Lainy, are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Crowd, are you ready? Yeah. Awesome. With a round of applause, let's welcome the first founder to the stage. This is yours. What is your name?
My name is Zev Abrams.
Zev, you have a minute. What are you building?
So over 80% of products fail, and often that's the fault of the product manager who is using ad hoc methods. In fact, a lot of product managers can't even define their own role. So my name is Zev Abrams, and I'm building Iteraite. That's Iterate spelt with AI. And what we're doing is building a virtual product manager that uses AI to help follow best practices and take you from discovery to delivery. We're using AI to help automate workflows, brainstorm on ideas, and provide you with actual dynamic feedback. Now, we're not like other product management tools or these single prompt GPT type things. In fact, we're trying to reimagine product management from the ground up using AI. My co-founder and I, we have years of experience in product management, AI, and startups. And we've recently launched an MVP. We have a couple of free and paying users, a couple of design partners signed up. And actually, this week we should be signing our first angel check. So essentially, just as Copilot
That's a minute. So we're going to pause there, give you a round of applause. So let me start with a question. You might have been on this track as you're talking. So I'm a product person by background. So when I'm not foundering, as a founder, I'm also still a product person. So I can probably relate to some of the problems you're talking about. But a mixture of question and pitch feedback, I have not in that minute been able to imagine exactly, what the product is. And there are also a lot of competitors that I'm, kind of familiar starting the space. Let's get a little bit more literal on the UX. What does the product look like, feel like to use?
Yeah, so right now, actually, all we're doing is we're building tools that help existing product managers. That's not our ultimate goal. So right now, it's really just going in, defining your product, and we just automate a bunch of the existing workflows. So product managers use a lot of templates. And if you're using templates, that's something that a new AI can actually automate pretty well. So if it's a PRD, if it's a lean canvas, if it's risk analysis, we just help you run through it. But we also, one of the tricks is we give you feedback on the ideas. So we use the AI to also give you feedback and criticism so you can really iterate on the idea.
Where do you live? Are you, there's a separate desktop app? Do you live on top of another system or?
So right now it's a separate platform. It's me and one other guy. Okay. And so right now it's just a web application, but the goal is actually in the future to be sort of like a Slack bot type thing that interacts with teams wherever they are 24/7. And then the product manager, or whoever's in charge of it, will be like a super user for our platform that's reading into it.
I guess from the perspective, there's two questions that every AI founder who gets up on the stage gets from me. The first is foundational models are going to improve. And if we read the tea leaves, it seems like they think the people building it and the people who are close observers, they might improve so much that even being able to generate custom user interfaces and applications might be possible with these models themselves. So first question on this is how are you planning to stay relevant in the context of GPT-7, GPT-8, and the potential for these models to kind of cannibalize?
I mean, first of all, my background's in AI, like deep learning, computer vision stuff. But I'm not...
Feedback. We didn't hear that until just now, just so I want you to think about that in the first 60 seconds.
Time in a
minute. You got it.
I mean, I was director of engineering, VP product. So I'm not worried about the big companies. Like I'm following it. It's moving at breakneck speed. It's ridiculous. I've never seen anything like this. But I'm focused on a vertical. I don't care. I'm solving a problem that I know exists. If I have to change the backends, I don't care. No one cares. The better question is, okay, what's your moat? That's usually the tougher question, because the question is, if, like Google said, if we don't have a moat, neither does OpenAI. We have our ideas of how to make a difference, like on the feedback. So it'll be very industry specific in terms of like the feedback it's giving you and helping you with specific things. But honestly, it's just view AI as like cloud 10 years ago. That's not the issue. The question is, what problem are you solving, and are you solving the problem and helping people?
Just, in the context of that answer, it's an interesting answer, but the challenge is, and this is like a storytelling challenge that I'll encourage you to think about, kind of moving forward. Your pitch doesn't feel like it's about all of these other things, right? In terms of like, maybe what you're telling me there is, look, I can change the foundational model, but the important parts of my product are not going to be about the AI itself or the specific generation of AI, but instead how it integrates in workflow, how it integrates with Slack, how it interacts across teams, how it does access control, whatever else, right? And your pitch has so much been maybe this base layer of, hey, AI is going to help automate a lot of what a PM does. If the application is so much more important than the fact it's AI enabled, or there's some mixture there, that's what I'm less clear about or feel less compelled by in the form of your answer.
So, I mean, I would say that you couldn't do this without AI. Like, this is literally an AI first company. Like,
right.
The entire way this is built is around the AI, interacting with unstructured data. And unstructured data, you might be thinking like, oh, data sets and everything. No, just talking and writing documents and brainstorming, that's unstructured data.
Your challenge is your foundational model companies are getting better and better every single moment at this. And so if I have a ChatGPT subscription where I'm already paying 20, maybe they'll eventually charge me 40 or 50 bucks, maybe $100 a month. You have to be as compelling or more compelling so that I dish out that extra cash.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. I know a lot of VCs are always saying, like, they think that everyone is using ChatGPT. 95% of the product managers I actually talk to, not just product managers, any field, they're not prompt engineers. They don't have the time. They're not playing around with these things. When they come and they see like, it's not a chatbot. It's not a GPT. It's a bunch of sequential, there's a lot of business logic behind it. They're just like, wow, how is it doing all this in the background? And I'll even tell you another trick for everyone here. You can get a ton done with GPT 3.5, which costs nothing. You don't need to go to like the latest, greatest to get a lot done.
Oh, so you kind of alluded to it, but the long-term, it sounds like a replacement for PMs?
That's the tough one. I have to be careful who I'm talking to here, because PMs get a little antsy when I say this. I mean, I would honestly say at first you could probably replace junior PMs. I know a lot of people are like, wait, but they're doing the kind of rote jobs, and this is true for a lot of fields. If it's something that can be automated, it will be automated with AI. It's not me, it's someone else. And junior PMs, what they're doing, that can be replaced with AI. You ask like, oh, what will happen? Everything will just transition up. That's just what's going to happen in all the fields.
Something I'll say about that answer, I encourage you and other founders in this sort of copilot for a role or a job to be even braver than you were in saying, hey, here's what I'm going to replace. So last episode, as an example, there was someone doing this for PMMs, so product marketing managers. And then we've had two people other than you do it or propose their startup as AI for product managers. And always there's this hesitancy. And look, if you're talking to your customer, you want to be a little bit more about, hey, I'm helping you and I'm not yet replacing you. When you're talking to investors, or even sometimes when you're talking to customers in a more visionary aspect, the challenge with staying hesitant on this is a VC especially is going to be looking for you to paint a future of the role. What does the product manager of the future look like? What's your product called again?
It's Iteraite.
Iteraite, right? Iteraite with AI, right? Spelled with AI. So the idea of here's what PMing looks like in 5 to 10 years based on our theory of the world, I think makes this very compelling to a potential venture investor versus here's the simple SaaS tool that might be deprecated, right? And so we're going to have these harder conversations around like, hey, this job might not exist in the same way, or here's what it's going to look like in the future. I think the trade-off of making some people antsy and making some people yell at you on Twitter or wherever else they're going to yell at you from, that's worth it in light of some of this. Do you agree with that feedback?
I do agree with that. And I think especially in light of what we've seen, in the historical, industrial revolutions, if you will, like we augment jobs, like what someone is doing is totally different. So I think there's also a version of the world where you can paint the picture of what the VP of product is doing in the future with 1,000 copilots running in the background, making sure that, the trains run on time, but that they're, able to do a far more strategic vision or what someone who works for them might be doing if it's not a super senior person.
What do you think about the notion today of copilots and work from a go-to-market perspective? You guys, Kraft obviously invest in a lot of businesses that have to solve this. And one of the worries I have for all of these sorts of companies is the bottoms-up approach versus more top-down sales approach, how it actually monetizes. Anything you guys are thinking about framework-wise?
Yeah, what we're seeing right now is that the easiest place to do replacement is if you have like a BPO. It's much easier to let people go that never worked for you. And it's much more political when it comes down to teams and fiefdoms and how much power someone has in an organization, which is oftentimes expressed by how large their headcount is. So those are some of the very first things, that and an ability to take out huge swaths. So if you're a very services-oriented business, it's a little bit easier to see. We haven't yet seen sufficient automation to replace most white-collar workers yet today.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting portion of, is it GPT, is it the next foundational model that enables this, or an applied use case, right? And that's going to be your challenge as a startup.
I mean, I have the problem with going PLG or top-down, lots to talk about, but one of the challenges of not doing top-down at first, not going enterprise at first is, and I've spoken to a lot of big companies, they're very wary of third-party AI companies. And so they're wary of me using an API call to company X. They don't trust them for good reason. You shouldn't. But they're also wary of a company like
Can I give you a pitch feedback real quick before you finish this answer? I wouldn't say, you did this a lot during your pitch where you kind of injected what I would call very objectionable opinions. So I disagree with a lot of the small things you said. For example, I don't think enterprises are actually that worried. I think that's like a thing people are saying.
No, they're telling me.
I don't care what they're telling you. They're not that worried. They're adopting these tools quite quickly. They're paying a lot of money to these companies. They're going to trust OpenAI, by the way, before they trust a startup, no matter what you say. That's just going to be the truth of the matter. But you don't need to have this debate with me. Tell me your vision. Don't even say this, right? Like these sentences you're saying are throwaway sentences where you're trying to establish your credibility and expertise by saying, I've talked to enterprises and they've said this. Well, I've talked to enterprises and said the opposite. Let's not have that debate. Just say the thing you want to say about, hey, here's what enterprises are going to want to see. Here's how they're going to see it. Because when you say these objectionable statements, as you're going, I'm not disagreeing with you. Then you make me disagree for a reason that isn't about what you're building, right? Just like a thought for you.
Yeah, but the main issue is always like with all enterprise sales. It's just the integration. I've worked in a large enterprise. Just the integration takes forever. You're going to have to talk to the CISO officer and all these guys. It just goes on for a long time, which is why like even we're starting with like a PLG-ish approach. Just in terms of strategy for early stage startup, it's easier to get the initial feedback and stuff like that. Whereas I prefer to say, hey, look, we can replace, large ticket, instead of paying 60, 80,000 for this guy, pay 20,000 for us, something like that. But we can't do that off the bat.
Yeah, thoughts for him?
No, I mean, I think it's super interesting. I think that the bottom up version is probably going to be challenged from a contract size perspective, as you were alluding to. And frankly, like where do the incentives lie? And so I would probably encourage you to go enterprise earlier and bite the bullet and build for that buyer that's at the top that has real budget. But loosely held opinion on that one, actually.
I agree with you. I really do. I mean, the partners, the design partners were actually, two of them were going to be hopefully with universities, one here and one in Israel. And two reasons. First of all, get them early, get them while they're in business school and then they go out to the market. But it's also a great, a user base for feedback. So the goal is to go enterprise.
The other thing I would want to include in a pitch like this, there's so many products in this space. And there's even one, what's the one that,
Chat PRD?
Thank you, Chat PRD. This is the one that everyone's talking about, right? as when you're talking to subject matter experts who are likely to hear of something like chat parody, you should have that as part of, it's not part of your 60-second pitch, obviously, that's about your company, but as part of your storytelling, embed you clearly already know what it is. I could tell you have the expertise, you've probably played with it, you probably know how you're better. Embed some of that initially in your language and in your storytelling. By getting ahead of it and not forcing the investor to have that conversation, you can shrink the amount of time that you spend talking about somebody else and, kind of discard it immediately. Because I know you have all those answers, right, ready to go. And so address the chat PRD in the room and just get that out of the way, again, as part of your initial storytelling. But Zev, as a product person, I encourage you, replace the function. Good luck with it. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Lainy, I'm curious, the notion of copilots for different jobs is going to become just like, I don't know if it's already 30% of the pitches you hear, but it will be. What do you think about them from a philosophical angle? Do you think this is like something you want to invest in the next 1-2 years? Or, is the position, hey, like AI is still transforming too quickly every day. The chat BRDs of the world or all the other products in the world, if there is going to be an AI copilot replacement, it's not going to be from the 2024 vintage of startups. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, my overall bias is that it's really hard to argue how you beat an incumbent that is relatively recent that can integrate a copilot into their product with like 2 PMs and like anyone with half a brain sees that this is the trend line. So I personally am looking more in categories where there are not tech-forward incumbents or incumbents at all that have historically been resistant to change, have historically not adopted software, but there's a big opportunity here because, like Dreamforce was entirely about, how Salesforce is going to integrate AI. Now, will that be successful and will they be the winner? I ultimately don't know, but they have a whole heck of a lot of distribution and money to put towards solving that problem, versus other categories that have never really been touched and transformed. So that has been my overall bias, especially when you're talking about nearer term opportunities versus longer term disruption. And yeah, it's a fair point that most of the bubble companies did not end up being the right horses to back. So to me, that's more disheartening.
Like Jasper, also like these early AI companies that were immediately almost deprecated by the evolution of the foundational models.
By the next one and the next one. And to your point, like by the time we get to, version 9, exactly how much will be possible. So thinking in that way of like, how specific can we get when we're building these products to avoid that sort of dynamic of potentially becoming pretty replaceable pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's this idea of like, what would that foundational model company care to chase after?
Yes.
Which like does Google care about this question or does Facebook care about this question of the last generation, but in a different shape? Super interesting. Shall we welcome next founder up?
Absolutely.
Round of applause. Founder number 2. Tell us, what's your name?
My name is Max Klein.
Awesome. Max, are you ready to tell us in a minute what you're building and get some feedback?
I am.
Go ahead, you have a minute.
Leah is the document understanding API for wealth management. Using purpose-built data extraction technology, we help registered investment advisory firms build the client and advisor experiences they need in order to grow. I started this company after experiencing the convoluted back and forth of helping my family get advice from a financial advisor. It turns out behind this everyday experience is a $500 billion industry buried under piles of documents and unstructured data and desperate for solutions to help them win business from the next generation of consumers. Our 8 beta customers use Leah to understand the data that comes in from documents and statements in order to win new business faster, onboard clients more efficiently, and create a comprehensive understanding of each client's financial life beyond just their portfolio. Just today, I spoke to the CEO of a $3 billion RIA through cold outreach, who not only wants to join our paid beta, but also wants to invest because the pain is that real. I'm a 7-year Amazon product veteran and built.
That's a minute. Let's give you a round of applause. Don't worry. We're not going to stop there. Gotta keep that mic. Great energy. Love your energy.
Yeah. I want to hear more about the product.
Yeah.
We are an API that you can dump any type of financial document or statement or PDF into, and we will spit out exactly the structured data that a wealth management firm needs in order to grow their business. Let me give you a specific example. So for the first part of the sales process in wealth management is called proposal generation. That means imagine if you are a potential client, you walk in the door, you've got a couple Schwab statements, a 401k, you give those over to the advisor and you say, make my life better. Today, they have to go through this line by line, could be tens or hundreds of pages if you have somewhat of a complex financial life, you have a spouse. We extract all the holdings, ticker symbols, quantities, cost basis, pump that into the systems that advisors are using to do proposal generation. So it's literally days of work turned into 2 minutes.
What are those systems? Like, what do you need to integrate into?
There are a few key systems that advisors use for onboarding, ongoing business, and proposal generation. One of them is owned by a company called Orion. Another one is owned by a company called Morningstar. I'm sure you've heard of that firm before, at least in different contexts. And then firms that are more sophisticated, maybe managing 10, 20, $30 billion, they have their own portals and data lakes that they're building, and they just want to be able to call an API. So it's really them calling us versus Leah having to integrate across their entire stack forever in order to start delivering value.
I will say the initial story, and by the way, like it was the point at which you said, let me give you a specific example. A lot of founders get up on stage and you were clear enough in your minute around mission and kind of like what this product was trying to solve. And then when you were answering your question, you very specifically gave an example that allowed me to imagine the solution. So kudos to you, because otherwise, most of these conversations, it might take 10 minutes to get to that point. So good job there. I'm curious, from a product perspective, a lot of what I imagine here from an extraction of data perspective, that feels clear to me in terms of what someone has to look for and all this stuff. Tell me about the reasoning someone has to do, right? So if I'm creating a proposal, or feel free to switch the context of an example here, the thing as an investor, I'm curious about beyond, okay, great, is there a data problem, a data extraction problem? Sure. Yeah. But I'm also very curious about the reasoning problem, as in once that person has that data and looks at that data, how much are you helping them do something with that data? Does the action item that happens next have a lot of variance, as in, is there a lot of complexity and differentiation afterwards, or does that data spit out the same 3 results all the time?
So if I could summarize your question, what the heck is going on with this?
Yeah, there we go.
So I need to take a half a step back and give you a little bit of context about what's happening in this industry. Before, for the last 20, 30 years, this was a retail asset management business. You as a client, dump your assets over to a financial advisor, they manage your portfolio, manage some risk, done. But that is changing. Getting a balanced portfolio is more of a commodity product today. We all know that we can be a self-directed investor through Betterment, and mostly everything will be fine. So in order to differentiate themselves, advisors need to start giving you financial advice that goes beyond simply managing your portfolio. That means things like tax planning, estate planning, asking questions like, do I have the right P&C insurance coverage? How do I even start to think through a problem like that? And the role of a financial advisor is to be a fiduciary. So they're not trying to sell you an insurance product. It's not like going to a broker and saying, which insurance product should I get? This is somebody who is supposed to have a complete understanding of your life. So that's part one. Part two is, now, why does this even matter? If you're a financial advisor, the most important thing you need to do is deepen your relationship with your clients. The way you do that is through understanding their full life. Right now, they have no way of doing that. It's like, send me some documents. And then you're just assigning yourself hours or days of work. So essentially what we do is create an entire client understanding or client profile of each and every person who is a client of that firm. And we generate insights, or we help the firms generate insights around where there's a tax planning opportunity, where there's a mismatch in terms of life insurance compared to how much money they might be, that they earn from their job, or how they should be allocating money between different accounts that are for long-term or short-term purposes. All of these key financial decisions that a financial advisor would otherwise do in a completely unstructured way is something that we allow them to get to the final answer.
You paint a very clear picture of the world. It's very helpful, and it lets me see like where you want to go over time. My question for you would be, do you want to be an RIA, or do you want to sell to RIAs? And like, why? The market to be an RIA is also quite large. And if you're the best and you can recruit the best with your best software, that's a huge opportunity versus, enabling the incumbents.
That opportunity is our opportunity. There are firms right now who are reimagining the way that this business works from the ground up. Companies are raising huge venture capital rounds, and they are RIAs. That is their business model. They are going to be our customers. We're already in conversations with them. the aggregator firms who manage 30, 40, $100 billion, they're going to be our customers. So we are able to address an opportunity that's as industry-wide versus building one specific firm. I think that building a specific firm is a great mission as well, and we want to be the enabler for that.
Why? So you answered the question. You said, "Hey, I'm going to pick enabling versus building the RA." But what's and you mentioned the big numbers behind some of these people who are building, but it still doesn't tell me why you wouldn't yourself go for that opportunity.
Look, I spent 7 years at Amazon. I built data and API powered products in Kindle, Alexa, and Amazon Prime. I am a tech founder and tech builder. I think that there are amazing opportunities around building tech-enabled service businesses. I want to be the part of the stack for every single firm out there.
I like this answer a lot. And, a lot of the way you mentioned Betterment, by the way, as part of one of your answers as well, which I think is smart because that was a company, them in Wealthfront, that ordered my head as you were talking. Is like, and those are not successful outcomes, all said and done, as big as those brands are in the robo-advisor space. And so you explicitly saying, hey, and you might say this more explicitly, actually, I'd even dive deeper into this from a pitching perspective. The thing I don't want to become is the person who's going to have the strategy ourselves and get into this weird relationship with the customer where we have to decide, what rates are we giving you and what funds are we putting together and our strategy. Instead, the technology layer is the most important part to enable a bunch of different strategies across our customer base. Here's what comes next, blah, blah, blah. But I think that's really compelling. And I think, again, lean into that as part of an earlier version so that the question doesn't linger. Because to me, I would not want to invest in a company that's, doing the other thing because of all the pain points that you'd almost address in that moment.
Yeah. And the positive corollary of that is the market cap of Charles Schwab is over $100 billion. And guess what they do? They build technology for RAs. Bank of New York Mellon, $30 billion company. A company you've never heard of, SEIC, $8 billion company. Those are serious valuations and serious public companies. And that's what we can become if we do this right.
If we extrapolate what's possible with AI in the next several years and, we go from like basic OCR technology to, being able to ingest most documents without a ton of prompting, do you need to have a UX that the RIA is using every day, or are you just a middleware layer? Like what happens over time? This
is a question we have thought about a lot. We, in my intro, our one-liner is we are the document understanding API for wealth management. So we think that the biggest growth is happening for us by being a middleware layer. Middleware is the bigger opportunity. Smaller firms want a UI. We have a UI now because it helps us in those conversations, but ultimately we are an infra company and that's what we're building towards.
I think there is a different sub-question that she was asking there. Maybe let me reframe it a little bit. How much does middleware become the entire thing over time because of the potential of AI, right? And so
one of my favorite questions.
Do your customers exist? I don't know if this is where you're going, right? Do your customers exist at the end of, enough AI improvement?
Yes, because our customers are the firms. Human beings still crave the human connection. That's why they go to a financial advisor, as antiquated as it may seem. The companies that are
this has to be part of your story, right? To emphasize the human connection of this firm as part of this is key.
That is why we are serving firms. Right. They're not going away. There's an eternal human need for this type of advice and for somebody to have your back. The companies that are going to get squeezed are the ones who are providing that UI and they're saying, "Oh, our presentation."
You might even in this moment talk about how Betterment and Wealthfront became commodities, and there were 1,000 robo-advisor startups, and we're not going to be playing that game, and the institutions that will win won't be playing that game.
Yeah, but everybody needs data.
Right. Again, I think from a feedback to even improve on this, right? Because you're telling a very compelling story, and I think a lot of the ingredients here are coming together quite nicely. The thing that I imagine your struggle will be is to convince people who aren't already looking for this solution, mostly because of the market. So people who believe in this market, want to invest in this market will go, "Oh, he's solving this in a way. I have a thesis on this market. This matches up," because they've worked or invested in an investment firm. They've tried robo-advisor startups or they believe that this is already a vision of the future because they understand some pain point or are a subject matter expert. But then there are generalist venture investors who also want to bring along, or customers, whatever else it might be. And these individuals, I think, will need a little bit more of this narrative and world building, right? You don't want to do too much of it because, again, you did a very good job getting practical, which is key. However, again, a little bit more of that world building to enable somebody to understand a lot of what you've described. Because every time you've answered one of our questions, I've been nodding. I think you've been nodding. And so that's like a sign that like your understanding of world building is good. Bringing some of it out a little earlier in the narrative doesn't all have to be in that first 60 seconds, but really good job pitching. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks a lot.
I will say on the Charles Schwab and BNY Mellon piece too, preempting that, like in my back of my head thinking like, I guess I'll Google later like how many RIAs there are and like what that would mean for contract values. But like being able to say like right off the bat, like you should pay attention to this. There is a huge incumbents that are spending a lot of money on this. At least paints the picture that even if you can't see it immediately today with where your contract values are going to be, that there is a lot of real estate to take over here.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Good job. Lainy, I'm curious, this is one of those interesting spaces where the replacement from a technology perspective that wasn't possible last generation is possible. And this happens, every cycle, I think, right? Like, all of our food delivery startups were originally conceived in the .com era and succeeded in this era, or succeeded, I don't know, unit economics aside. But how do you think about that notion this time around? Is there a sense to which like there's a blueprint of this was tried before and this time it'll work? Do you avoid thinking in that framework? Is it something interesting to you?
I always think it's an interesting advantage for people that are newer to the industry who don't have the scar tissue of why this failed last time. When there's a platform shift or a technology shift that allows you to, reimagine something. So in some ways, there are like great lessons to learn throughout history, but it's a absolute dangerous path to go down to say like, well, someone tried this in 2015 and it didn't work then. So it's not going to work now, is very dismissive in a way to miss out on a lot of returns.
Yeah, would have had you miss out a lot in the last generation of tech.
Absolutely.
Before we move to the next founder, the crowd is looking real good. I'm going to take a photo of you guys. This is your opportunity. All right. 3, 2, 1. Awesome. And then Lainy, me and you need a selfie too. 3, 2, 1. Okay, with that, shall we welcome the third founder up?
Absolutely.
Round of applause. Third founder. What's your name?
Rachel.
Rachel, you have a minute. What are you building?
Yeah. So I'm building a platform called Adjacent. We're like Duolingo, but for entrepreneurs. So we give you a roadmap of what tasks you need to be working on. We use gamification to help build a mentor community. And then on the back end, we provide incubators and accelerators the data analytics to improve their programs. We're trying to make it so not 90% of founders fail because it's really, really hard right now. Adjacent's out on both the web, Android, and iOS. We have our first 500 beta testers, and we have our very first paying customer just this month. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome. Under a minute. Good job.
Thank you.
You first for me first.
So who are you building this for? Like the founder that is still working full time and is doing things nights and weekends, the founder that's about to incorporate, like where do you want to catch someone?
Yeah. So I really want to catch people at the idea stage. So we want to be the very first person that they're talking to. We want to make it so everyone really feels supported through the entire journey. Right now, we stop at around that. You finish your minimum viable product and you've raised money area.
So you painted the picture with Duolingo of a sort of like bite size, like I interact with you once a day. Did I take the right thing away from that analogy?
Yeah, I would say so. We break up what you're supposed to be doing into really bite-sized fun tasks. There's goals that you can set, and there's like tasks that your administrators can be sending you, like based on your specific areas that you're in, whether it's construction or med tech or consumer tech. They're specific for you.
And are you imagining this as just as relevant for the entrepreneur who's going to start a restaurant as the tech entrepreneur, or is this much more specific?
Yeah. So the first thing that we have is more focus on tech, just to really nail down a small targeted community. But I see an enormous opportunity with economic development corporations and those smaller businesses, because there's only a few million people that want to start a tech company. But I think that there's a much wider market of something like 500 million people in the world that want to be starting a business. So we're starting small and targeted and then growing.
Should this be a company or a nonprofit?
So I think that nonprofits are difficult to work in. You're always beholden to someone else. I really like to make money.
Good line.
Yeah.
I think it serves the founder better because we're connected towards not just showing that we've made fuzzy founder impact, but hey, we've actually tangibly moved the needle in your progress, and we want them to be willing to pay for it.
Let's talk about that for a second, because that's what I'm curious about. Why do you think the things that you'll recommend they do or you help them do will move the needle for them?
Because we'll be able to show them for the very first time when you even fail at your startup, you'll be able to show, hey, I've gotten to stage 8. I've gotten to stage 10. That's something that you can actually.
But what might it tell them? As an entrepreneur, this is the thing I want to wrestle with for a second, right? Like, I like that you don't want to be fuzzy, but it's hard for me to imagine what's not fuzzy in engaging with an app like this. Even if you're the best product builder in the world, I'm trying to imagine, okay, what's the thing? What are the things you're going to encourage me to do, track from me, make my life, make my day to day that will move the needle? In talking to a lot of founders as I do and in building my own company, the things that I will do on a daily basis change quite frequently. The people across from me at a different startup are doing quite different things than I'm doing. We might both succeed, but again, doing a different set of activities. And so let's go to the ground truth of it philosophically. Like, what are those things that you think can be tracked, can be recommended, can be advised in the context of this?
Yeah. So there's like sort of a packet of tasks that everyone gets. Things like incorporating your company, starting your first landing page. Those are very clear, tangible. Things like your first customer for $10, your first customer for $10,000. Those are very finite and discrete. We also have tasks given to you by your mentors. So they're able to have that industry knowledge to give you the very specific targeted tasks. And finally, you're able to add your own tasks. So it helps you also be a little bit of a project manager.
How does this compete with what I might be using for literal task management, right? Or do I suddenly have two systems trying to tell me what to do on a daily basis?
Yeah. So I think that here it really helps that connection between what you're doing and what the community around you is doing. So personally, now that I've used this system, I don't use any other task management platform. So I think that one day will be good enough to be able to transition over.
How far into someone's journey do you imagine them using this?
Yeah. So right now we're really stopping at the pre-seed area. You've raised some money. I see us building from there. It's definitely one of those moments of now the app is live, people can download it, and we're getting that first interest. However, this isn't we aren't Series A, we aren't Series B. And so I want to say, honestly, that step hasn't occurred yet, but it's definitely something that we're planning on.
Well, it strikes me that you've chosen like the hardest segment to build for instead of the easiest. Like, I find venture-backed startup founders are much more nebulous in terms of what they need to accomplish and what background they come from, and so where they spike and where they might need more support and that sort of thing, versus a much more well understood business, like a more traditional business, could actually be like a lot easier to map out what steps you might take over time. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, so I would say that maybe there's a slight clarification of the platform is built in a way that your private community, the person who manages that community, they're adding those tasks. So everyone sort of gets the very basic start your website, start your incorporate your company. After that, it's the community manager that sort of takes over and gives the specific task lists. So it's built for someone who might be running an incubator in AI, but also someone who's maybe in an economic development corporation and is getting more people that want to open restaurants, that want to open like a t-shirt shop or a cookie store. So it's very flexible.
Tell me more about these mentors or these like some of the other people on the platform.
Yeah. So this is, again, it's based on your community. So what's really nice is I would say it's a little bit, the structure of Adjacent is a little bit more like Slack. It's not one big Duolingo. You have your private Adjacent network for your community. So really, whether you're a part of a university, it's all the mentors that the university has. And that really gives them a side benefit of keeping their alumni engaged and interactive and being able to pull from their resources. So we aren't building that mentor community. We're giving community leaders the tools to sort of leverage their existing community.
And how do you think about charging?
Yeah, so we are charging not our typical charging model for our first user, just because we're still experimenting. There's going to be bugs. What we're considering is a tiered rate based on the size of the community. So if you guys have any feedback, we'd love to hear that because pricing models are hard.
I've been thinking a lot about the fact that I lost at some point after your pitch, because you did say it initially, that community leaders were directing this experience. Obviously regained it in the last back and forth you just had. It then challenged me. I think that makes you a very different company than the other thing I had in my brain for all the Duolingo that's more top down. Mm-hmm. I worry about that conceptually founder to founder for you because that's a very different company. And then pitch wise, I definitely worry because that's not where your pitch was oriented. Mm-hmm. And the challenge with a model that's aimed at, let's say, incubators and accelerators and suggests, hey, we're a toolkit that allows these people to run these sorts of experience for their members. That's a B2C company. And it's really, its main customer is now actually the community organizer, not the end user. You're going to do well for the end user to get the community organizer to use you. So again, it just changed the mechanics of what I was listening to in a way that shifted a lot of my questions a little too late into the game. So let me put aside for a moment my founder to founder advice of like, okay, play with that a little bit more before you decide to lock in and not go top down and be that, entrepreneurship thing for everybody. But let's say you do decide, hey, okay, no, the community is the way. Then think, how do you discreetly begin to talk about that customer? Because an investor, I think my worry would now be, okay, she's got too many customers. I don't even want to talk. Like one or both could have been a good idea, or either could have been a good idea, but I need to walk away now. So that clarity, I think, is super important because otherwise, as that shift happens, I gain so many questions, I'm almost paralyzed by them. So that's my overall on that problem. And then I'll just say, as an aside to kind of like, as you answered that, I thought about my last question about what's the UX of this all. Look, I think there's something to some of what you're saying, but if you're just like this, whether it's the whole idea of it's not just tech businesses or it's not just pre-seed, whatever it is, if it's just landing page and this and that and whatever, it's a checklist, right? And I think there's a compelling story to be told about checklists, but I think the other compelling story here is access to entrepreneurship advice has never been more free and open and prolific right now. The ability for somebody to self-direct has never been more possible. However, here are all the obstacles preventing someone from still executing. The ideas still do not matter. Execution is everything. And so that's a narrative that you can begin to build around. And the things you build, whether it's at the pre-seed or the Series A or the Series B, at every stage, execution winds up mattering. Again, this might be too different from the product you're imagining, but I think that narrative is just so much more interesting to me. Do I think, accelerators and incubators could use better software solutions and services targeted at helping them do a better job? Sure. I think it's far less of a compelling opportunity for you. from financial and startup perspective. But again, the fact that we have all these questions, all this other stuff, it means the problem's interesting, but you might be early where you even want your pitch to sound like you're still in theory mode in a lot of these places. Yeah. And then lay out a bunch of hypotheses for us rather than one. And then that's okay. And if someone says that's too early for me, that's fine. But other people are going to go, no, I like all these experiments because I think one of them is really going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I sit between the tension of going after a small market if it's very specific, or it not being as you go into more and more verticals, it feels more and more like a checklist, because how could you possibly have experience in everything that anyone could want to do, and then you're just a really expensive checklist, versus like having real deep expertise somewhere and having a point of view on a product that has a lot of opinion and can guide people through. So the mentors are like 10 or 20 or 30% or whatever, but the bulk of the product and the opinions are really coming from you. I think those are pretty different directions to go in. I think I highlighted some of the shortcomings, but they could also both be very interesting.
Yeah. This is something that I'm still figuring out for myself. And I think you've really hit on this tension. And so I've now built Adjacent enough where people can try it and figure out like, where is that excitement? And who's willing to pay? That's probably the most important thing. But thank you. You've really helped.
Absolutely. Well, love the mission that you're on. So good luck with it. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
When you think about the notion of entrepreneurship as a customer, and entrepreneurs as a customer, I am always challenged by how big I think that market is. But there are a lot of people, to your point, not just in tech and otherwise, but how would you imagine as an investor sizing that market? Like, give the view that other people building for that space, because not the teams that she's building for and other people in her space, she's building for the founder or the CEO.
Yep.
How do you size appropriately?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about two different things in this case. I'm thinking about, are you going to build and grow with the entrepreneur? And I believe that there's a lot of market to capture for the number of companies that actually graduate over time and become bigger companies, and I'm going to stay with them. Or I'm going to need to move into entrepreneurship writ large and tackle, every type of entrepreneur around the world and support them in some ways. I think they're very, very different paths to try to build something that scales with a venture-backed startup versus goes with a kind of more traditional entrepreneur. And by the way, both a little scary from day one with kind of entrepreneur startup mortality rates in SMB, generally speaking.
Well, I think to your overall point there, the idea of the verticalized versus the more generalized motion, it can work. And then then I think it needs to almost be bigger statements. And this is where I got into like, okay, maybe you go into the execution versus, what because there is so much advice now and there is so much access and there's so much mentorship. And so maybe there's something about behaviors. I'm not trying to define this person's or any person's startup for them, but the thing I'd be curious about is as she has people initially download the app, can she find initial key triggers and behaviors and user moments? And she goes, great, it's not necessarily about the task list, but it's about some other theory of how founders or entrepreneurs behave or literally act on their day-to-day. And that's more what it's about, because then it can be more generalizable, right? It's like, it's that a list that it feels dangerous.
Yeah, 100%.
So welcome to the next founder stage.
Absolutely.
With a round of applause. Next founder up. What's your name?
Jake Hammy.
You have a minute. Are you ready to tell us what you're building?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do
Go
it.
ahead.
All right. Hi, I'm Jake Hammy, co-founder, CEO of Construct AI, where we solve one of the biggest problems for construction companies is getting paid on time. A lot of electricians or plumbers, they get into this cycle of not getting enough money on time, but still having to pay their workers. So it just becomes this vicious cycle of losing money. And hopefully you make it to the end of the project where you recoup everything. The way we do that is we provide them a mobile and web platform where they run their project, right? It does all the project management things. But then at the back end of it, we have built an AI engine that takes all that data, analyzes it, and starts predicting when are these tasks going to end with data to back that up. And then when they submit their invoices, it is with data evidence that this is 20% complete and give me 20% of the bill.
That's about a minute. Use a round of applause.
That's it. Okay.
For better or for worse, I happen to know quite a lot about construction, so
Awesome.
I'm going to get right into it. Are you GCs or subs as the first target market?
So first target market is subs, because I think we have a better value for them. We provide transparency to the GCs, which they are
Just to
looking for.
define context for me, because I've listened to both of you. So subs being subcontractors. So this is like, and the reason I think you would ask this question as a way of helping the crowd out too. This would be more important to them, and you'd be interested in this because the sub owes more obligation to a GC because they're being trusted as a subcontractor. Therefore, a GC cares more about like the supervision and the costs and the.
Well, I care mostly because the flow of funds in construction is you get a bank line that's going to the owner, that's going to the GC, that's going to the sub, that's going to the supplier. It's a total cluster. And you're pretty far down the line there. Is I think the implicit part of my question is subs would love to get paid sooner, but hard to go up that funnel independently without having help from our other friends along the life cycle.
Absolutely. And I think so in where we are at, I think the subs get the most value because so we're actually partnering with I won't say the name, but another company that helps move these funds from sub to GC. And so they're using us as a validator tool, and then the funds come through in more automated way. So that's where we would provide value to the subs. The GCs using the data we have and all the pictures we collect and analyze, and they would get the transparency in real time. Where's my project? How far along are you? Where? All those questions that is today really an opinion, right? When a GC calls a sub, how far along are you on the plumbing of that project? Some supervisor is going to answer, and he's going to say about 20%. Okay, but that's his opinion, really, and there's no much evidence usually to back that up. And then there's a fight, right? 20%, 15. But by the time you're done having a fight, you've lost money paying out all the laborers and all the suppliers, right? So what we're trying to do is make that a data-based conversation now, right? Where I am 20% done. This is what's done. We can go to the site and check it out, but you can't do that all the time. But here's the evidence, and here's the analysis that supports that. And then on top of that, we are, our algorithms start learning how to run a project, right? So the next project, based on all the information you've used. So this is kind of like deepening that relationship with the sub, even the GC, where it's for your next project, these looks like these will be your tasks. These were the best guys for those tasks last time. You should assign these guys. So we must start making recommendations. Our vision is to actually do those assignments, and the workers just show up. That's our long-term vision, kind of like the beehive mentality, where I have a project. I plan it, I hit go on the assignments, and then, whenever the time comes and the money flows, the workers just show up, start working. So that's really where we're headed.
I think I missed the long-term vision. Can you try again on what you mean by the like workers are showing up?
Yeah. So right now, going down that chain, right? GC gets a contract. What we envision is they use our platform to actually plan the whole project, even assign to subs. Subs get notified that, hey, you have this work here. The sub continues to use a platform from previous learning. Starts making all the tasks for that part of their job. Knows who's working at the sub. Starts assigning tasks to those workers with dates, and those workers just simply get notified automatically that they have a task to do, next Monday at Empire State Building, whatever, and that's it. And they show up for work and clock in. We have all those features. Like we've built last couple of years, we've built all of the features you would use at a work site. So clock in, clock out, assigning tasks, reassigning tasks, all those kind of the day-to-day things supervisor workers do. All that's in there. So, I just see a fully automated future where you can just plan a project, and people show up, and that's it.
When I think of subcontractors, when I think of plumbers and electricians and drywall and the wealth of subcontractors that exist out there, I don't think tech forward and the first adopters of these technologies.
Nice.
So
That's exactly right.
how do you motivate someone that is traditionally very not forward-leaning, probably?
There are words I fil like you want to use that you're just not letting yourself.
I've heard all those words.
Yes.
Said to my face.
I in my mind, I typically imagine a husband-wife duo, that the wife's doing the back office and the husband's in the field, and maybe there's a stack of papers, 3 feet high. Paint me a picture. How do we take them on the journey to want to do this?
So I think in that scenario, I think simplicity, right? So one of the first things we found out, and when we first started, I spoke to mom and pop shops. I spoke to a guy, he had 1,000 workers doing the concrete superstructures of buildings, right? So obviously they have different needs, but we realized that the platform has to kind of shrink or expand based on your capabilities as a company. And that's what we've built. So if you're a mom and pop shop, right, you're not going to need all the features, right? And then, but you won't even see them either. So I think simplicity, one is also people have different incentive in order to get the best data to analyze and to train our models, right? We have to get the worker involved, right? That's been a huge obstacle, but we've worked really hard to overcome it. And I think in the last iteration, workers are asking for the app to come back because we gave them some features, then we tested those, saw the data, pulled back, and so we're kind of in a test mode with them right now. But when we pulled it back, they were like, "Where is it? We want it." And it's kind of
What is it?
What's that?
What do they want?
So I was going to say what we realize is everybody has a different view of a construction project, right? So a worker is very like day to day, right? So if you start talking about profit loss and if you don't do this, the company loses money, nobody cares. Like they don't care about that. But what they do care is how much money they're making today, right? And if you have an innovative way of showing them that if they do the work today and the work tomorrow, what's their paycheck going to look like, right? That was a big hit. So
is that what the product is?
It does for the workers. Yes, every user has a different view. So the worker, when he finishes his day, he knows exactly how much money he's made. He knows. He also can check, how he's helped the project move along if he's interested. Depends. I mean, it's like an 80-20 rule with that, but they seem to like it. They like the simplicity of just knowing what to do today. That's it. Today is 8 hours of this. Done. So we've made it very easy for them. It's been working. So we have a couple paying customers and a few hundred testers.
I have grokked zero of this pitch over the past 9 minutes. She's probably grokked a little bit more because she knows the industry. Let me tell you why. You are in the weeds in a way, and you've changed your narrative a few times to answer questions rather than giving maybe a central view. I think probably, do you come from the space?
No, I come from the tech space.
Okay.
My co-founder is in the space, living it day to day.
Okay. You are surprisingly then in the weeds in terms of like my ability to come along with you is not technologists. I feel like, I hear about a worker's incentive, then I hear about this incentive, and I don't hear a tie together. I don't hear what it looks or feels like. Let me tell you, kind of how I'm trying to piece it together in my head. I think what you're trying to tell me maybe is a story about a bunch of different incentives that today do not serve some end customer. But all those incentives wind up mattering, right? And so there's the person who wants the project done. And then there's a general contractor who wants to get the project done for that person. So they get the main VIG that has the most margin to it. And there are all these subcontractors, and they want to get paid. They want to be able to report their work well. Then there's a worker who gets their paycheck at the end of all this. The problem today, because of the way the system works, because it's all legacy, because it's all paper, because it's all phone calls, and it's subjective, none of this gets done without a lot of headache. And so everybody's talking to everybody, doing qualitative assessments, asking for money, giving opinion rather than fact. And some combination of AI and application can solve a lot of this by streamlining the communication part. I think this is what you're trying to solve, where pictures, images, data as to who was where, all of this from an application layer can be tracked, and utilizing AI can be analyzed such that we can actually track that entire funnel. Everybody in that stakeholder chain can have the same visibility. There can be an AI-based initial scan and analysis before there's that human in the loop to do that deeper dive. And the vision of the future is not only to start this today to enable everyone who already is in the space, but by the way, we think there are a couple people here who aren't necessary. And so a long enough time horizon, they're gone because we're planning and we're project managing and we're delivering, kind of reports and invoices and payments on everyone's behalf. Is that what you're building?
Yeah, if I could record what you just said.
It's recording.
I think I'll make that our promo video.
Yeah, well, there we go. And look, I think I was deeply trying to follow it, right? And so not everyone's going to want to do that.
Yeah.
So let me give you, I think, how to think about why I put that together the way I did. When you were answering her questions and when you were mentioning all of this, remember I told you earlier, my feedback feels like you're switching your story a lot and we're in the weeds. There's clearly a lot going wrong, but I think the thing I hooked onto is it seemed like as part of your initial pitch and some of what you were saying, it seems like some version of visibility or transparency was important and qualitative or otherwise some sort of analysis was important. So, okay, if I have to imagine his product, it seems like it can't do any of this work. So it must be looking to understand some truth about what everyone in this chain is doing. And it must be trying to give everyone visibility that, and then your question, I think, helped me form also the incentive from a financial perspective of everybody, down that chain, why they would also want the same thing, even though they might be at odds with each other, right? They might have antagonistic relationships with each other. But if, there's a world also, I think this could be part of your pitch or not, where you make all of these people better at their jobs, which means, end customer is better off because the GCs are more responsible and have more reliable subcontractors and timelines are better. And the bad people are driven out of the business and the good people actually get more business. They can prove that they do good business. So there are all these narratives, but you got to put them together.
Okay.
And you got to figure out how to put them together really nicely and in that quicker time, because otherwise, again, I had to really be trying to imagine a lot of this, and because I'm not that experienced in this space, and so I was like, okay, what do I know about when my mom renovated her kitchen? What was hard about that, right? And work backwards from that. Instead, maybe you give that context or use a hero story. And I don't often encourage people to use hero stories because sometimes it's cringe. Like Jane needs to study, and so she has an app, right? But in your case, there's so many stakeholders and complexities that actually it makes sense for you to anchor on a hero story where you're kind of describing all the parties involved and why they might benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it benefits everyone in that chain that you explained, and so, but everyone wants a different thing, even though it's for the same goal.
Right. Well, they don't want a different thing; they want something different. They think they do. They think they do. There you go. There you go. Well, listen, appreciate you sharing. Good luck for it.
Thank you.
That was interesting. I think this is one of the pieces of feedback I sometimes give people is the mission can sometimes overwhelm the product. And it wasn't that he was too high level in the mission, but it's this idea of can I touch and feel what you're proposing? Can I understand it as a person who's not in the industry? If I have no context, again, what do I imagine while you're talking? What do you think about the idea of hero stories in a pitch? When you see a deck and it starts with a, kind of a user journey, is that too fast into the weeds for you? Do you want to see a mission? Do you want to see a vision first? How do you think about it?
I tend to agree with you. Hero stories are tough to get right and not be patronizing or what have you. In this particular case, and I actually think this works for a lot of industries, not just construction, but, super collaborative industry sucks at collaborating. What's great at solving that problem? Software.
Right.
And I think you can do a quick framing of here's my overarching problem statement, even though various stakeholders may have different problem statements, but let me just start by painting you a picture of a disaster.
Right. Well, because it's setting essentially the stage for where I'm going to come in and move the pieces. And sometimes that isn't as necessary. And in fact, sometimes I tell founders up here, hey, we already agree with you on the problem. We agree with you on, the before of the world. Get to the after.
Yes.
But in some cases, actually, the before is so complicated and again, not widely understood. You have to live in it a little bit more.
And to your point on certain industries that, people have different amounts of context on, I think it's even more important to be super flexible because you don't want to over explain things that people already understand. But at the same time, if you miss that opening window to give someone a picture of how you see the world, it kind of becomes unnatural to go back to it.
Totally. Totally.